You good over there? All right. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out. I want to take just a few minutes to update the community on where we're at with SB4, the changes that we're making to APD's policies to ensure that we are compliant with the court's rulings that came out yesterday. Start off with, I think the community's aware of my sentiments, the sentiments of the police department when SB4 was being debated at the legislature, having testified against it in both the House and the Senate for the reasons that most police chiefs around the state felt were challenges for our communities, challenges in losing the trust of the community, people being fearful to report being victimized or witnessing somebody else's victimization. These were concerns and are still concerns. That being said, the courts have made a ruling and we stand ready to comply with that ruling, and we've made changes to APD policy to ensure that our practices are consistent with the changes that were made to law. I'll highlight a few of those here today, remembering that APD has never had a policy that did not allow officers to ask immigration status of individuals they were interacting with, but we're going to be more clear in the policy to define the parameters under which officers will be allowed to do that. We will maintain a policy that our officers will not detain someone solely for the purpose of determining their immigration status. That will remain against policy. However, officers that have lawfully detained or arrested an individual for a separate offense may make an inquiry into their immigration status with a few limitations that I'll touch on here in a moment. As we've said before, I personally believe that there's a purpose for that when someone is under arrest, but we expressed as a group collectively, police chiefs across the state, the ability to ask that question during a mere detention. However, the courts have ruled, and our policy now will allow for that question to be asked during a detention. There are some exceptions to that. Officers will not be allowed to ask that question of someone who is a victim or a witness of a crime, except under certain circumstances, such as if that person is believed to be involved in a separate crime, or if that person is seeking a U visa and we need information on that to help them with that process, or under very other limited circumstances would we allow those questions to be asked of an individual who's a victim or a witness to a crime. I've mentioned before the importance of data and the importance of knowing what's going on in the community, especially surrounding this issue, knowing how challenging it may be for some. So to address that, officers that choose to make an inquiry into someone's immigration status will be required to write an offense report. This report is necessary so that we have data and understand the circumstances under which we're asking these questions. Whom are we asking? Why are we asking? Where are we asking? And so officers that ask this question will add a title code to their offense report that will be a report that will track immigration status inquiries, and they will document in their report the reasons why they ask that question. There was specific language in the law when it passed on things that officers are not allowed to consider when asking immigration status, such as language, race, things like that. Specifically, officers will not consider race, color, religion, language, or national origin when choosing to ask these questions. So it's important for our officers to document the reasons why they're asking these questions, so that if we are ever questioned on whether or not we're compliant with the law, we'll have the data to explain why these questions were asked. We also will comply with ICE detainers. The law requires that, and our department will comply with an ICE detainer if requested. We've talked before that ICE detainers are not normally something that comes across to the Austin Police Department or other municipal police departments. I do not expect that will change, and I do not expect that our officers will be receiving information on ICE detainers during stops and detentions. That is not the way the system is set up. Those checks are done at the jail when fingerprints are sent off to the federal agencies, and that's when the detainers show up. So I do not think that this is an issue that will confront us as a police department However, we have included language in the policy that indicates if we were to find ourselves in those circumstances that we would comply with that law. But again, that is not something that we expect to be involved with. And then lastly, we did address in our policy that APD will assist federal immigration agencies when requested. We have in the past partnered with federal immigration agencies. We sit on several federal task forces. We work with the DEA, the FBI, and with ICE. But it's always been when there was a criminal nexus involved in what we were investigating. We will cooperate with Immigration Department if requested. However, outside of an emergency circumstance, we will require that the officer seek approval from their supervisor before providing the assistance, and then we've given guidance to supervisors on things that they should consider when determining whether or not we can assist. Things like the availability of resources, things like whether we have officers available that are knowledgeable on immigration law, and things regarding the consistency with our ability to carry out our other public safety priorities. So where we stand today is I'll be signing these policies into effect this afternoon, and the training videos will go out to our officers, and we stand ready to comply with SB4. And as the courts consider their consideration of SB4 in future hearings, we will pay attention to those as well to ensure that if further adjustments to our policies or clarifications are required, that we make them consistent with what future rulings may come out. So I want to reiterate what I say every time we talk about this issue, and this is a direct message to our immigrant community, reminding them that the Austin Police Department stands for your safety along with everyone else, and this uniform means that we're concerned about your safety, not your status. It is still just as important as it ever has been that you continue to trust us as a department, to understand the importance of our relationship, and to be willing to come forward if you are ever in a situation where you have been the victim of a crime or you have witnessed somebody else be victimized. Because if we set up a system here where our immigrant community does not feel safe coming forward to us as a department, then the criminals will know that, and they will feel the ability to prey upon the immigrant community without reprise, and that will make the entire community less safe. So again, I ask for your continued partnership, your continued cooperation as we work through the issues with SB4. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
So now that officers are cleared to ask detainees, not arrestees, about their status, does not having documentation or proof of citizenship constitute an arrestable offense?
No, not for the Austin Police Department. That is, we are not in the business. We're not in the business of enforcing federal civil immigration law, and so it's important also to mention that officers have the authority under SB4 to ask someone their immigration status. The person they've stopped is not required to answer that question, and our policy absolutely outlines that we cannot compel somebody to answer that question. Officers have the authority to ask the question, but they do not have the responsibility or authority to compel someone to answer that.
Can you talk about what the training videos will entail that are going to be going out to the officers?
We did a training video. I did a video where I just explained to the officers just some of the high-level issues with SB4, kind of introducing this policy to them, and then what will happen is in their show-up trainings before they go out on patrol, they'll watch that very short video, and then their supervisors will go over the policy with them, again, wanting to make sure that everyone is clear on both what is allowed and what is not allowed under SB4, since this is a new policy with a lot of concern in the community surrounding it.
Did you say prior to SB4, APD had the authority to ask immigration status?
It's never not been allowed. We've always done that. Actually, as a matter of practice, when we arrest someone and book them in the jail, that is something that we have to put on a booking sheet, is whether or not they are U.S. citizens, because if they're a foreign national, we actually have a requirement to notify their consular general office. And so this expands it, though, to where now just on mere detentions, officers have the authority now to ask that question.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.